Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Let's go ahead and get to, first of all, some Sweet 16 games. All odds provided by BetUS Sportsbook. I'm going to give you my quick thoughts, and then I do want to get to some questions. Producer Matt, have 2 or 3 ready to go because I think the chat is humming right now. All right, so let's start with the Thursday games. Los Angeles, the games that I think I'll be at. I'll definitely be at the media availability tomorrow. Clemson against Arizona. Arizona, a 7.5-point favorite. 2 seed versus 6 seed in the early game in Los Angeles. Let me just say this. I think this one's close. Arizona's a 7.5-point favorite in the BetUS Sportsbook. And the bottom line, what I would say really quickly is this, is I get that Arizona is a really good team. They are going to have a huge home court advantage. The number of Arizona fans, I don't think people realize how much they will pack Crypto.com Arena / Staples Center on Thursday night. But Clemson is one of these veteran teams. They're not afraid of anything. And remember this with Clemson. Think about who they beat in the non-conference. They beat Alabama at Alabama in the non-conference. They beat South Carolina. They beat Boise State, who made the tournament. They beat UAB, who made the NCAA tournament. They are battle-tested. They're veteran. They took care of Baylor the other day. It's hard for me to pick against Arizona, but remember, Arizona, we've talked about it since the bracket came out. Ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. You know, a team that had a 17-point lead in the first half against Dayton in the round of 32 and then immediately gives up a 10-0 run to Dayton. So my hunch is Arizona wins. I like Clemson plus the points. Give me Arizona, I'll say 81, Clemson 77 in that one. Second game in LA. Interesting one. North Carolina versus Alabama, the 1 versus 4. That part of the bracket ends up kind of staying as planned. North Carolina only a 4-point favorite in the BetUS Sportsbook, over under 173.5. I got to be honest, North Carolina, I feel like, is not getting any respect in this NCAA tournament. Remember, they were only a 4-point favorite against Michigan State in the round of 32, and they ended up winning convincingly going away. Now, what's interesting here, the over-under of 173. Basically, everybody thinks this is going to be a shootout back and forth, high scoring. I think UNC wins going away. Listen, Alabama, I've said it consistently. I think they've overachieved this year. I respect the hell out of what Nate Oates did throughout the season, but I think it's a tough ask of him against this North Carolina team. One, Alabama, I know for a fact, has stayed on the West Coast. They played in Spokane. Their game ended late Sunday. They just flew to Los Angeles on Monday. So they've been on the road at this point for about 8-9 days if you go back to last week. Now you got to play a Carolina team that's really good, defensively sound, and that Alabama game against Grand Canyon could have gone either way. So I just like North Carolina. I like them versus, against the spread -4. I just think that number is way, way, way too low. Give me Carolina to win that one. I do think it's a little bit more high scoring. I think it's because of their defense. I'll say Carolina 88, Alabama 80, Carolina and Arizona in the Sweet 16. Let's go to Boston, the early game. Did you see Dan Hurley all pissed off with Matt Norlander? Basically, Matt Norlander told Dan Hurley, hey, you got the early game on Thursday. He said, that's disrespect. Everybody's against us. It's us against the world. UConn, an 11-point favorite against San Diego State, a rematch of last year's national championship. Listen, this isn't one I'm going to bet. San Diego State is tough. They're a veteran team. They got a bunch of dudes on that team. Lamont Butler, Jaden Leday, who, of course, were part of that national championship game run a year ago. But I don't know that they got enough horses. And the thing with UConn, I keep going back to, the way I think you have to beat UConn, you have to be able to put the ball in the basket. St. John's in the Big East tournament put up 90-plus points. That game was competitive. Creighton put the ball in the basket against UConn. I don't believe that San Diego State can do that at a high enough clip. The question is their defense going to be good enough to slow down UConn? Lamont Butler is probably the best defensive guard in college basketball. I don't know. I assume he's probably going to take Tristan Newton. I think this one's low scoring. I think UConn wins. I'll say like 70-59 feels about right. So right on the number. I will not be betting it. I do have UConn winning. And then the late game is going to be fascinating. Illinois, Iowa State. Iowa State, a 1.5-point favorite. Listen, the advanced analytics tell you that basically since, probably the last month or so, Iowa State, the best defense in college basketball. Illinois, the best offense in college basketball. Listen, I learned my lesson with St. Mary's last week. If it's offense versus defense, give me offense every time because it's just a lot to ask to stop a team for, again, 48 or for 40 straight minutes. And I just think Illinois is playing at a truly elite level. I've said from the beginning, I think Illinois, and I did say Auburn as well, so I can't really not take credit for that. But I think Illinois could give UConn problems in the Elite Eight. Remember, Terrence Shannon Jr. is playing like the best player in college basketball right now, right alongside Zach Edey. 30 points against Duquesne on Saturday, 26 in the opener against Morehead State, 34 versus Wisconsin, 40 in the Big Ten semifinals. I mean, you're talking about over the last 5 games, he's had at least 28 points. He's averaging about 33, 34 points per game. Insanity. I like Illinois to win that game. And they got other guys too. Marcus Tomaszek. I always trip over his name. Coleman Hawkins. I just think they give Iowa State a lot of problems. I think UConn's size could give Illinois problems. I don't think Iowa State has that. Really quickly, let's get to the Friday games. Let's go to the early ones. BetUS Sportsbook, the first tip on Friday. Marquette versus NC State. Listen, NC State's an incredible story. Marquette's a 6.5-point favorite in this one. Won't be betting this one. I think Marquette wins. Shaka Smart, by the way, quietly got a monkey off his back. You know, Shaka Smart had not been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament since his 2011 Final Four run. So Shaka, I think that monkey's off his back, but Marquette tends to play close games, and they're really good, but they're not good enough to just blow teams out. They just don't have the size. They have the skill at the guard position, but you give NC State 4 or 5 days, I think this one's close. Remember, Marquette, they actually trailed at halftime against Western Kentucky in the opener. They ended up winning going away, but they did trail at the half. And then they beat Colorado by 4. Wouldn't surprise me if NC State pulls off the upset, goes to the Elite Eight. Maybe we get some Kemba Walker type magic. Remember, Kemba, 5 wins in 5 days at the Big East tournament. Then they go on to win the national championship. But I do think that Marquette wins. The late game in that Midwest regional is of course Duke Houston. Duke Houston is the late game there. Houston a 4-point favorite. Listen, I actually like Houston. I think what is happening in this game, I think it has swayed too much to Duke looked awesome. So we are going to we're going to fade Houston, and Houston struggled against Texas A&M. Remember, Duke, with due respect, they're a 4 seed. They played a 13 seed and a 12 seed to get to the Sweet 16. I'm not disrespecting, but I do think the love is probably a little bit too much. And then Houston, they played a power conference team. Texas A&M was a preseason top 15 team. They played Texas A&M in the out of conference. And so because of it, I just tend to think that Houston, Texas A&M is going to play them about as tough as anybody. I think Houston wins this game. I'll say 72-60. Houston advances. And then in the Midwest region, listen, a lot of people seem to think Gonzaga has a shot. I just don't see it. They have bigs, but they're either really short like Graham Ike or they're really skinny like Braden Huff. I think Purdue rolls. I think it's another 30-20 for Zach Edey. This could be the game, by the way, where Zach Edey, where Gonzaga picks up 6 fouls in the first 2 minutes and the discourse really begins. But I do think Purdue wins. And I think that second game, Creighton, Tennessee, absolutely fascinating. I do worry about Tennessee. That game against Texas really did worry me because they just couldn't score the ball. And Creighton is a good defensive team. They can put the ball in the basket. I'll actually take Creighton plus the points. I think Creighton wins outright. By the way, Tennessee fans, before you get mad and throw mayonnaise bottles at me and golf balls, I had Tennessee in the Elite Eight. I think they're the best matchup for Purdue in this region, but this game worries me. And I think Tennessee really probably has played one really great game out of their last 4. They lost to Kentucky in the season closer. They lost to Mississippi State in the SEC tournament. They rolled in their opener, and then they struggled against Texas. I think Creighton wins. So those are my Sweet 16 picks.